Good peeps, we are live. Got you guys a Barbaresco today, so maybe some of you recall a couple days ago, we got a couple periscopes ago, I should say, we had a Barbera, and I was telling you guys that Barbera is the second grape of Piemonte, basically. Second grape of Piemonte. First is Nebbiolo, Barbera, and then you have Dolcetto, which has a very, very interesting, very, very purple hue to it. It's a very interesting grape. Well, we have a Barbaresco today, which is Nebbiolo, and Barbaresco is known as the Queen of Piedmont, Queen of Nebbiolo, because you can also make Nebbiolo from more basic areas like Langhe, etc. Barolo, of course, being the king. So Barbaresco, for a while, Barbaresco was... Well, that's good, actually. That's really good. It was overlooked to Barolo. But now Barbaresco is really coming to its own. You can even see from certain producers, Barbarescos can be superior to the Barolos. So Barolo is still, Barolo is still better. But let's just say that the differences between Barolo and Barbaresco are more muted than the past. Just like we got gender equality here, right? Where, it used to be the kings, and the kings had to step above the queens. Now it's like kings and queens, kind of on the same level. But anyway, it's a very nice wine. It's a 2011. It's very nice. And it'll get even better as it opens up. All right, guys. Dating questions. Let's do it. So I got 3 we can go into, and I can take any other ones you guys have. So the first one, how to get motivated to meet a high-quality woman after a bad breakup when you're running an intense business. Is it that sometimes they're better to be single and that you shouldn't put pressure on yourself to meet someone? Well, bad breakups, like bad anything. And by the way, I encourage you guys to have some wine during this. If it's 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock somewhere right now. But look, there are seasons of your life. So I'll say, first off, that you should not put pressure on yourself to meet someone. Obviously, certain people have particular circumstances, right? Particular circumstances where, let's be blunt here. If you're a woman in your mid-30s, and you just got out of a serious relationship, you're in a pretty shitty position. So from that sense, there is going to be more pressure. And while you don't want to feed into that pressure from a fear perspective, there would still be an acknowledgement that it exists. You can't deny the reality of that. So I want to be clear that this is not, there's always some nuance to it, right? But the reality is that we have seasons of our life where it's better for us to be single, and sometimes it's better for us to be in a relationship. What's up, man? How are you doing, John? And after a big breakup, I usually don't advise people to get into a relationship again. There are exceptions to this, where let's say the relationship has been on its way out. If it's been on its way out for a while and you've really processed it, then you are maybe much more equipped to get into a relationship in a shorter time frame. But the main thing to understand about a bad breakup is that a breakup is as bad as you allow it to be for yourself. I don't let people jump in on the call because I have no idea what you're going to say. You could hijack this entire thing. I can schedule a periscope with somebody and do a joint thing, but I'm here to answer questions. You guys can put some questions out if you want. So putting pressure. So what am I trying to say here? I lost my train of thought. All right, I hate these notes. I hate these notes, guys. I hate notes. Notes always get me sidetracked. I'd rather just riff off of this. All right. There's no really such thing as a bad breakup. There's only the bad framing of the breakup. Okay? I'm not saying that you can't have a terrible experience occur to you. You can't have some massive delusion or fantasy shattered from a breakup. I'm not saying that that's not the case. And I'm not saying it doesn't hurt. But a breakup, you can frame it as a terrible experience, or you can frame it as a teaching experience. When one of my ex-girlfriends taught me a lot about the dark side of women. Didn't need to read a book to find out about the dark side of women. And but even as she was like threatening to kill me after she had, I mean, a lot of bad stuff happened, right? I was just grateful. I was grateful that she blew the thing up too, because it saved me time, and I was grateful for all the lessons she taught me. And that's it's a really important thing to have that. So I think the problem is that people get stuck in this like, yeah, you know, she did me wrong, she did this to me, and it was really rough experience. It's like you got to open yourself up to love. You can't close yourself off to love. You have to allow these experiences to teach you so you can have better discernment. It's one of the reasons I coach, is to teach guys discernment and to help them to understand their experiences better. But it's this sort of, you know, don't, like, if you open yourself up to love and you put yourself out there, you are going to find someone. As you know, assuming you're building yourself up, right? Assuming you're making yourself valuable. I mean, there is this objective sexual value that you have in the marketplace. But if you put yourself up there and you open yourself up to love, you'll get it. If you understand how women work, if you understand how to read people, et cetera, et cetera. So the motivation is just to understand that just because something bad happens, it doesn't mean it's the end, guys. It doesn't mean it's the end. There is no end. There is no real end. Even, you know, as I talk about some of these esoteric stuff, even as like bad is swept away, I mean, there's always going to be, it's going to come back at some point in the future. There's never an end. We just play certain roles. We have these seasons of our life, and we're here to learn and never be afraid to keep going. That's what I would say to that. So the next one here, next question. Question number 2, benefits and drawbacks of living together before marriage. How long to date and why overly long periods are the norm today. So let's take this little by little here. So benefits and drawbacks of living together before marriage. Well, the benefit would be that you would get to be with someone in a closer proximity, and therefore you would presumably get to know them better and read better red flags about who they were, things that they had been keeping hidden. And it's true that you cannot know fully about someone until you've lived with them for a period. So that's valuable stuff. The drawbacks of living together is that, well, it's probably more of a drawback for a woman than it is for a man. I think it's funny that a lot of women, because of these problems, right? I think that women are less likely to have a guy commit to them if they move in with him early. So speaking from the perspective of a woman, it's pretty bad, I would say. I think that there's only downsides really to moving in with a guy. But as a guy, you could say it's more of a mixed picture. The main thing I'd say is that there are, if you date someone for enough time and you have a chance to, you don't have to live with them to understand everything about them. This is actually a really important point. All right, this is an important point. The red flags and the serious stuff, you don't really need. It doesn't take living with someone to fully understand that. What happens when you live with someone is that you start to understand. You start, like, the little things about them that we all have. We all have little annoying quirks, and the higher levels of proximity, we are more merged together when we live with someone, and therefore the friction is very often increased, at least in the short term, as you have to meld together better. And so from the standpoint of having two people move in together without like a bigger commitment, it's there are problems here. There are problems here because you're less likely to make it work. Because and this is important. You're less likely to make it work for the wrong reasons. So you can get distracted and your emotions can get hijacked by little things. And if you don't have the commitment to work through those little things, because the fact that those little things annoy you, and also to an extent the fact that other people do those things, it depends on the thing. You know, like what kind of, is it chores? You're not doing chores. You're not doing this. You know, like there's all sorts of random shit that we only learn about ourselves through another person. But if you don't have the commitment background to work through those things, you're more likely to fragment. And it's over things that you will actually have the same experience with other people. So I don't really think it's a good idea, and I think that the track record is pretty poor. It's pretty poor for it. Um, Also, it's really messy. So if you're when you move in with someone, moving yourself out, it's very messy. It's not as bad, of course, as a divorce or marriage. And there's some people who are gonna argue that that's why it's preferable, and I get that. I'm also very like sympathetic to the argument about marriage being removed from the state. I'm very sympathetic to all of this stuff. Although I think it's not one dimensional. I think that that's a good conversation to have. But when you have the situation where you're just cohabitating, you have a high chance of breaking up, not moving things forward. And so I think there's just a high chance of wasting time and going through a bad emotional experience. The number of people who have like moved in together, who break up within a 5 to 7 year period, is, if not shorter. I mean, they tend to either break up immediately or they break up within like that sort of 5 to 7 year period. Um, and it sucks, and I think that there's an important thing here, especially for women, because there's a lot of women who like they're 24, 25, and they move in with a guy they've been dating for about 2 years, maybe a year or two, and then they stay with him for like 7, 8 years, and they cohabitate, but nothing moves forward. I don't really get the point of it, to be honest. That's a long time. And then things break up, and she's like 29, 30, maybe 31. And there's an impulse for guys in our community to say that if a girl is single in her early 30s, that she's just this dumb, washed up bitch who is riding the carousel. There are cases of that, of course, but the reality is actually there's a significant number of women who are in that sort of single at 30 to 35 situation, who were in a 5+ year relationship in their 20s that didn't work. And a lot of that, I mean, there's a strong correlation to that with cohabitating. Now, if they had gotten married, would they have gotten divorced? I don't know. I can tell you that there were probably, if I'm being really honest with you guys, there were probably times, like my wife and I had to get married because she was on a fiance visa. Because the only way that it was going to be able to work is if that occurred. And so I just, threw the chips in, took the gamble. And there were some times, I talk about this in the masterclass. I draw a lot of, inferences out and lessons for you guys in relationships, because my relationship's phenomenal now. But there were a couple times that I think that if we hadn't been married, we probably wouldn't have made it. But the fact that we were married made us like put a little bit more in. We're like, we had that extra level of investment. Like, fuck, we're married. We have to make this work. And so that's kind of one of the things that Jordan Peterson used to talk about. And that was, I think, really important. So I have my own personal reasons for being a little bit more sympathetic to like the put your chips in sort of. But I understand that I think guys, this is more, I think, advice for women, to be honest, because I think for guys, it's sort of like you don't have any major downsides from cohabitating with a woman. But I think women have big downsides. I think it's just a dumb negotiating position from their standpoint, because they're the ones who lose by far the most in those situations. One other little thing here: how long should you date? Well, I can say this: if you're in all right, I'm gonna, because this is scaled for cultural environment. If you are in a very, very like conservative culture, I was talking about this with a client the other day. If you're in a very conservative culture, which prizes, virginity pretty much, or close to virginity before marriage. One of the things I think is ridiculous today is when you see in like I see this quite often in evangelical communities, or maybe even like really serious Catholic communities, is that you have people who are crossing two different cultural streams. So they believe in all this stuff, which is fair. I get it. I think it's, there's a lot of wisdom behind it. But then they're like, they're going to date for like 5 years. So it's like, okay, you're going to date for 5 years, but then you're going to be like prudish about sex. I mean, let's remember in the Bible, when people got married, they got married at like, women got married at 12, men got married at like 14, right? Even as you went to later eras of history, women would be married between 18 and 22. Men would be married between 20 and 24, 25, and it was pretty common for men before that to have some like brothel experience. So the point of this is that, and then when they did get married, when there was an engagement, it was fast. You get engaged, you were to be married within the year. 6 months engagements were common, maybe 9 months. So this whole idea of like, well, we got to wait till marriage, like cool, but then you're going to wait to get married doesn't make any sense. So I think that now all that's being said, you don't really start to get an idea of somebody until around 2 years of dating them. You can do it faster, but you don't really get an idea of who somebody is until about 2 years. And so I think it's prudent to at least date a year, probably 2 years. If from like a modern standpoint, here's my advice. From a modern culture standpoint, if you're in a really conservative Christian group, I would say date for a year and then probably get engaged. I mean, for another year, um, or maybe wait a little bit longer, but keep it like a 2 year thing because that's a reasonable enough wait. Um, I think longer than that, you start to have big trade offs. If you're just a regular mainstream person, though, and this is also scaled for age because much younger people should wait longer to get married because you are developing so much as a person. The person who you were dating before is changing as well. But if you're in your mid 20s, I think it's pretty reasonable to date somebody for 2 to 3 years. I do not think that you should be dating somebody after college for more than 3 years without it moving towards marriage, if that's something that you care about. I think that if you're waiting longer than that, I think that you are jerking yourself off. You're wasting your time. You're wasting everybody's time. You need to get serious. And my personal opinion is like I think it's cool to like be single and have fun. Do that. But if you're gonna date someone, if you've dated them for 3 years and it's been great, it's been easy, you've gotten through some hiccups, but things are great. Like you should be engaged to be married within a year. Like I don't understand what people are doing otherwise. And I have plenty of friends who haven't done it that way. And a lot of this is hindsight. So I'm not speaking from a position of like judgment, but thinking about it more now, it's like it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And again, I'm caveating that this is like after college. If you've been with someone consistently through college, or heaven forbid through high school, then you can get married right after college. But if you are just start to date them after college, give it at least 2 years, ideally three, and then it should be go time for that. And I have friends who have waited longer, 5 years, sometimes 6 years, and a lot of times it's worked out. Sometimes it hasn't. Uh, anyway, so that's that question. Last one. So I got a question about sexual energy. I've talked about this before. Your head going to your heart body. Like people get stuck in their head during sex, and to move that energy to their heart and their body, and sort of like the difference between making love versus sex versus fucking, right? What is the difference between all this stuff? Well, I think that there is a real difference. I was talking to another client about the other day about the sort of Madonna whore energy. And here's the thing, it's like the borderline girls, the crazy girls, they're so erotic. And it's fucked up. It's fucked up. And I don't recommend, certainly not more than once, but I don't recommend getting involved with them because they will drain your life force. They'll drive you crazy. They'll completely waste your energy and make everything else in your life just a disaster. But it's one thing that guys who have dated those women, they all agree upon, which is that there is an enormous eroticism. And a lot of times they'll meet a girl who's like a good girl. She's like good marriage material and she's attractive. And it's not that she's a prude. Like she'll enjoy sex and the sex will be good, but they'll be like, well, they're not as turned on as they were otherwise. They were with this like crazy slut, right? What's going on here? Now, my perspective on it is that those women, they really, one, they understand how men work better on a sexual level. And so, both women, they have their specialties, but the whore has her specialty with understanding male sexual psychology, understanding that sort of arousal mechanism, understanding the sort of male need to sort of dominate chaos, right? That's arousing for men, to dominate chaos. It is arousing for men to dominate chaos. So much of the stuff that we've seen in like propaganda and like porn, etc. Is all, it's a lot of it's about like guys being seduced by women. In real life, guys actually tend to have the most performance issues when the woman is coming on to them, because it's a non unnatural polarity. It's like we're being hunted, and when you're being hunted, you're impotent, right? As a man, whereas when you are hunting, your dick gets hard. You're gonna take her, so you get a lot more, you get a lot more excitement out of that. But I think another part of it with these crazy whore women is that they have a base, they create a baseline of tension that we are aroused by just being around them. There's that sort of constant like, what's going to happen with her, what's she going to do, and that tension is within us. Whereas with a girl who's good and who we trust, we don't have that like that little baseline anxiety about what's going to happen with her, that we, it actually is a minor turnoff, right? It doesn't, not that we don't want to have sex with them, but we don't want it like the same way. And it's the same story. It's like with one of these crazy girls, you could have sex 3, 4, 5 times a day even. And it's, but with like a girl who's good, it's like once, maybe twice a day, right? Like you just, even in the beginning, it's like twice a day. It's very interesting how it works. It's very interesting how it works. But so these different parts of the body, well, I think that sort of like the more you get into like really like fucking and like animalistic sex, well, you can have that with a good girl, but it's so much more natural with the whore. It's so much more natural with the whore because she is this wild thing. She brings out the animal within you, and that's one of the things about it. Whereas with a girl who's like a good girl, there's like a little bit, I hate to say, it's like more wholesome. Like I've used the word like holy to describe it in the past. It's this very, but it's a, I mean, it can be vanilla and can be very boring on a low level. On a high level, it can be very intimate and very passionate, and you know, but it's very sensual. I think sensual is the term versus sort of like kinky. And I do think that part of it has to do with you're maybe a little bit more in your heart center with a girl like that because you trust her and you feel a deeper connection with her. Rather, with the crazy girl, there's more of you that's in your sort of nuts down there. And I think it's important to play with that energy in your body. So for instance, like if you do have a performance issue, like really focusing, feeling the energy down there, like you'll get hard. If you can block out the rest of the stuff out there, you'll get hard. But again, I want to emphasize this. One of the big issues that guys have in the situation is that they might seduce a girl they're not really into. And so what they do is then the girl is coming onto them because they've encouraged her to do that through their seduction, but then they can't perform because now they're the prey. So it's kind of like being like the deer in headlights, so to speak. Like you've taunted this girl into pursuing you, and now you feel like now you feel impotent from the situation. So you know, it's kind of interesting because like some guys will have fantasies about that. Will have fantasies about you know mommy milkers, right? You see that on a lot of Zoomer Twitter. It's kind of fucked up. Just shows how porn's messed up that generation. But it's really like what you want as a guy is to take a girl. You want to be the hunter. That is what brings out your masculinity. That's what brings out your masculine sexual energy. So I had a question here. How do you make her understand that domination that men desire? Could you rephrase that, economist fit? Because I don't think I quite understand what you mean by it. How do you get a little bit of both? Well, so you can, and guys, I'm open to questions now. Feel just post it below. I'll hit them as they come. So you can get both, and an integrated relationship, like you as a guy, you are bringing out both the desire and the comfort that a woman needs, and she does the same, right? She does the same on her own end. The reality is twofold, though. First off, women have terrible game. So there's very, very few women who really learn how to understand what men do today. Women have been told they don't have to understand what men are like today. And to be honest, even in the past, they were only maybe taught, if you came from a good family, you were taught how, you're taught the Madonna aspects of what a guy wanted, but you weren't taught the whore. It was always segmented. One of the interesting things about King Edward, for instance, well, I heard two interesting things. King Edward, the king who was supposed to was king, right? But was kind of sympathetic to Hitler, and so he ended up, and also, but the big thing is that he married an American divorcee, which in the 1940s was, or 1930s was very taboo, and so Edward ultimately abdicated to be with this woman. Now, I've actually heard that she was a man. I've heard that. I heard that. I don't know if it's true. Um, what I also heard though is that she had, and these are not mutually exclusive, by the way, but that she had learned some tricks in the Shanghai whorehouse, and so she was very, very good at understanding how to turn a guy on, right? And so some women are taught how to be whores, and some are taught how to be Madonnas. Very few are taught how to be both. And today, we have us guys. We're in the game community. We're a lot of the guys here are learning how to integrate these two sides of us as a man, which makes us extraordinarily valuable to a woman, because there's a lot of guys who just create desire, and there's a lot of more guys who just create comfort. And if you're the guy who can bring both to the table, then you are enormously attractive to women, because they're going to be aroused by you and turned on, but they're also going to feel safe with you, and they're going to want to commit to you, and they're going to feel like they just enjoy being with you, right? They're going to have, so, but here's the thing. You can do as much as you can to integrate the two things together, but it's very difficult to actually, like, you're always going to have a side that you're a little bit stronger on. You're always going to have a side that you're just a little bit stronger on. And women are the same way. And so, one, the Madonna women do not learn how to be whores. You have to teach her how to be a whore, right? You have to teach her how to be one. And you can, but she's never going to feel as comfortable in that space as she did in the other space. You can open up her sexuality enormously and she will love you for it. But she's always going to feel more comfortable not being that woman. And a lot of times you have to break down associations for them. Just like a nice guy's like, I don't want to be an asshole. It's like you have to break down that association that, well, actually having boundaries and going after what I want doesn't make you an asshole. Women who are like good girls, they have to break down the association of like being a dirty slut who's really submissive and does all these things to please the man. They associate a lot of that stuff with being a whore, and they don't want to be a whore. And of course, both sides break through. You'll have the good girl will, on a certain occasion, maybe be a whore, but maybe she gets shamed from it. Just like the nice guy might be an asshole in a situation, but then he'll get sort of snapped out of it and shamed for it. So it's interesting. So it's all about the integration. So yeah, you can bring out both sides, but you are choosing to be a little bit more on one side. And even if you find a woman who's more balanced and she's like predominantly a whore, but you could bring out the good girl in her, it can be a very sexually arousing relationship. You're still not going to have as much trust. There's still going to be, like, you're not going to have that sort of lockdown trust that you would get with a girl who's much more on the Madonna side, because, if something happens, you have less wiggle room if you slip up. But, of course, don't slip up. So anyway, well, Kim, I would not recommend that you chase, because if you chase, you're way less likely to get him back. You should say, just let him know, cool, like, best of luck. Don't, and just move on. And you may get him wondering what happened. You may get him wondering, wait, she's not really that upset. Everybody gets, these are basics that go on both sides. So just don't talk to him. Don't talk to him. Spend time with your friends. Go do fun stuff. You can post it on social if you want, but don't be too overt about it. He will. What is going to really gratify him and make you feel lower to him is, well, you're not going to get him by you. Here's what's going to happen, Kim. Now, I'll just say this: if you chase him, you may get yourself back in the bang zone. Okay? You're not going to get a boyfriend again, but you may get yourself in a position where your ex-boyfriend is fucking you. And that's a really great way to not feel good about yourself, because he will start fucking other women. and you're just going to be in this place. So don't degrade yourself. If he broke up with you, I don't know the circumstances, doesn't really matter. This is a universal rule. When you've been broken up with, you don't chase the person that broke up with you. And it doesn't matter how it hurts. Go spend time with your friends and your family. You can't spend time with your friends, but who you can see, talk to them on the phone, and cry. Crying's great. Get that emotion out, but don't chase. Don't chase. Don't try to fuck him. That's a bad position. I can tell you as a guy who's done that to girls, you don't want to end up in that position. It's a dead end, because then he's gonna just treat you like like what you are. Got any other questions here? Any last questions? It's same for men. It's same for men. But for a man, remember, men have to create their value, women have to protect it. So as a man, you're not going to get her to respond to you or be aware of you until months later, years later, sometimes, usually months later. And you want to immediately focus on trying to build yourself up. It's the most important thing, is trying to get yourself in better shape, keep doing things that increase your value, because that can go up. And what's very, very, oh yeah, there's a little thing about this leather jacket. This is vintage. It's an 80s leather jacket. It's the only thing I got from my mother's father. I never knew him. Well, I met him a couple of times, but it's a long story. But he died when I was younger, and he wasn't really involved with the family. He was a welder during World War II, and it's the only thing I got from him. So I like this jacket a lot, and it's cozy, but I keep it in Haddonfield. Are online dating sites bad? Well, Ben, just real quick, months, years after breakup. If the guy doesn't care, who cares? You shouldn't be doing things to try to get back with someone. You should be doing things because they're good for you and they increase your value. And there's a tactic to maybe making a little bit more awareness of that to them. But if someone ends something with you, I mean, why should you lower yourself to feel like you need to chase after them? There's plenty of people out there who are going to appreciate you more. And chasing after somebody who broke up with you, I mean, it's their loss, right? Make it feel like it's their loss, but don't reward them for that. You can be grateful to them for teaching you lessons, but we can't get stuck in the past. We got to move forward. We got to draw the lessons from the past to create a better future. So, are all online dating sites bad? Any recommendations? Well, no, I don't think all online dating sites are bad, and I don't think that I think people just shouldn't use online dating sites. I think that they're a great part of the portfolio. I think for some people, they're, like in economics, people have different goals, right? So you're going to maybe put more bonds, maybe you're going to put more stocks, maybe you're going to hold on to some more cash, right? Get some precious metals, maybe. Well, it's the same thing with dating. Some people, based on their own circumstances, are going to do better to do more online. I think if you're a tall, attractive guy, online is a really good place to get your feet wet, because you can get some dates quickly and you can get a lot of practice in. I will say this though, I always say it. I know great people who have met each other online. As a guy, you're always dating, like statistically, you're dating lower online than you can get in the real world. So the main benefit of going online is if you're in particular niche demographics. So, for instance, I have a client just very new client, my newest client actually, and he's Muslim, and he's in an environment that's not very Muslim, and so for him to find the demographics that he wants, he's gonna want to do. There's an app called Muzzy Match, right, which matches Muslims. And that's important because it's demographic targeting. He's looking for someone to commit to, and he's going to waste a lot of time cold approaching women. He doesn't want to do, and he's done it, but he doesn't want to do like random hookups, and power to him. Tinder in America is much more of a meat market hookup site. Hinge is, I think, probably the best dating site in America. I emphasize America because it's different in Europe. Tinder is much more balanced in Europe. And Hinge, for instance, doesn't have much of a network over there. So, but Hinge in America is pretty good. The questions, I think, are one of the reasons that made them much better. Bumble recently added these questions too, because when we had initial online dating, there's a lot of questions, right? There's a lot of questions, and maybe it was a little bit too much. But I think people, when they went all the way to Tinder, where it's just swiping and there's nothing there, I think people have been like, this is really soulless, and so they're trying to go back a little bit. And also, it makes it a lot easier to connect with someone when you have some sort of comment to go off of, something that you can make a statement about. So I think that they're trying to move towards this middle ground where you can put stuff on your profile, but it doesn't have to go like out of control like it did in some of the old days with online dating. So I like online dating. I think it's good. When I was dating, I'd probably say as many as 40% of the girls that I dated came from online, which is high. It's high. It's not really high. I mean, for the mainstream person, it's probably like 80%. But I'm not all the power to the day gamers out there. But for the elite day gamers, I mean, a lot of them just do it cold turkey. To be fair to me, when I did it, this was actually back in the days of OkCupid preeminence, before it became some sort of SSRI hipster girl, disaster. There's a little bit of that then, but there was more going on. Now it's like really demographic profiling. So it was a bit different. But last little comment on this. The reason it's good, the cold approach, is not only because you're going to get higher quality girls, like looks wise at least, and very often in terms of, and I'm generalizing, but very often in terms of like who they are, because they're off apps because maybe they find it superficial. And the most attractive girls don't go on apps because it's not a pleasant experience for them. So really, it's like if you can approach those girls in real life, you have a real leg up. And since no one does it anymore, you really have a massive advantage. So the learning curve to learning day game is high. It's a difficult skill and you get blown out, but it shapes you as a man. And it also gives you an opportunity to really meet some high quality girls. So I highly recommend it. I mostly like online dating as training wheels, with the exception of certain demographic situations that I've mentioned. So let's see what we got here. I met in Madonna and we are both 40 and divorced, together since December. That's great, man. That's great. I hope that you guys are enjoying this period. Women who are in that sort of late 30s, early 40s stage are really like, there's a lot of them that are disasters and got a lot of ego around them. But there's a segment that's just so wonderful. From what I hear, from what I've experienced with clients, they've really done the work on themselves, and they take care of themselves physically, and they're just wonderful to date. They're smart, they're beautiful, they're mature, but they also have actually brought out this femininity. And so I really hope that that's your girl. That's a wonderful thing. That's a really wonderful thing, man. You guys are going to get married. I love it. I love it. This is a really great point that Jackson just made here. Acknowledge you have little to no power over their decision, and the power of the idea of them diminishes. It's 100% right. And I think it's more than that. You have no power over their decision, but things happen. Like this is not preaching complacency, but guys, things happen there's other things that affect timelines and that affect interactions. So a lot of people here think that they want to have control, and the need to have control is a really, really, you start to get into low vibration states when you get obsessed with that. The purpose of going and approaching a girl is just to see where she's at, to see what the connection between the two of you is. It's not to make something happen. Any guy who's like talking about that, like, how do I close? How do I get this? How do I get this? Like, you want to know the tactics, but this is not a way of living. It's not a way of living to try to force someone. When I get on a sales call with a guy who tries to reach out to me, my thought is not like, how do I close this guy? It's like, well, where's this guy at? What does he need? Are we a good fit? And if I feel like I can help him, I'm going to obviously, create that space for him to work with me. But I'm not like just trying to grab, like people say, oh, you should work with this guy. It's like, no, probably not, because he's probably not in the space to do it. And I don't care. I'm not here to save everybody. I'm here to work with people who want to do the work. And it's the same thing with women. Like, you're gonna meet a woman who's in the right place to be with you. This is why it's like when a woman's like, "Oh, I just need time." It's like, well, cool, like, but do that if you need to do it, but don't expect me to like be hanging out here for you. Like, make your choice. That's okay. I don't have any need attached to it. Which is why, like, if things in my life fell apart, if like my marriage fell apart, like I've said this multiple times, fell apart, it's okay. I mean, I'd obviously be sad. I'd have to grieve. It's part of being human, but it's not like that's the end. It's not like that there isn't other opportunities out there. And if it happened like that, it was meant to happen like that. So I like Hinge a lot. Yeah, I like Hinge a lot. So, my friends, I think this is good. I'm gonna get back inside with my family. Take care. It's good talking.